Bright QT. Every student matters.
Now let us turn to topic 2. In this topic, we'll look at the measures for removal of poverty. Now there are many measures which have been taken by the government or otherwise we can take to get rid of the poverty, to reduce the state of people's being in poverty. Okay, so let us look at some of the measures. The first one is development of agriculture. Now, with the development of heavy industries and agriculture, so in the agricultural sector, the development that we can bring is called green revolution. All right, the improvement of the techniques, agricultural techniques, the technology, the machines used for the purpose of agriculture. So if we develop industries and agriculture, we can remove poverty. Now, by developing heavy industries and agricultural sectors, we can create more employment opportunities for the people. Okay. Now, when people get employment opportunities, can apply for jobs, can get hired, and also start to earn their livings, then there will be rapid economic development. Right. Now, this is called trickle down effect. Okay, what is trickle down effect is, imagine that just like the drops of rain, how it drops and then it can go into the formation of lakes, ponds or puddles or rivers. So we say that each drop of rain goes on to make the ocean, goes on to make the river, right? So what happens is, with the rain, it can go on, or it can be used, the raindrops will go on to be used for various purposes. It will go on to get our cultivation right, irrigation purposes, for drinking water, for water that we require for our daily lives. So all that purposes, the wildlife, the vegetation, all will thrive and will benefit from the rainfall, right? Now, in the similar manner, when we develop our industries, agriculture, right, these are two sectors that we develop, but with that development, what is happening, many people are reaping the benefits of those developments. They get jobs, they get hired, they get employment. With the employment, they get earnings, they make good income. With that income, they higher their living standard, they can access facilities. So you see, that will go on to the development of not only the communities, but the societies where the communities live, the nation where all these communities live and they thrive together. All right, so this is called trickle down effect, how small we just take one step for the development, but that development goes on to help so many sectors and so many people. All right, the second is population control. By controlling the population, we can get rid of poverty. Now, population control is very essential for eradicating poverty. Eradicate means to get rid of. Okay, now how can we do it? How can we control the population? So there has to be family planning programs. There has to be programs which will tell or spread awareness about family planning, which will tell people, teach them about family planning, and they can effectively apply those teachings, apply those learnings, and then that will go on to the control of the population. So all that programs, just the initiation of those programs, just by starting those programs, will not control the population, will not eradicate poverty, but they have to be effectively implemented. We have to make sure, or the government has to make sure, that those programs are implemented effectively, that people are making use of the programs, that the programs are helping people in the population control measures to eradicate poverty altogether. All right. The third measure is development of cottage and small scale industries. By also encouraging, supporting and developing small scale industries, we can control or we can prevent poverty. Now, small scale industries, it employs more labor, more people, more worker and less machineries. Okay, the big large scale industries, they employ less workers because they have machines which does most of the work. Okay, so the machines do the heavy work, the people required to work the machines are less. All right, so heavy industries, large scale industries need less labor and more machineries. But it's the opposite with the cottage and small scale industries. They depend upon more labor, more workers and less machineries. And what that means is that if there are encouragements, support provided to the small scale industries, then more people can go join and work in these industries. With work, they get money. With money, they can improve their lifestyle. They can have a better living standard and have access to basic necessities. All right. And there is also something, there's also a role played by the government. The government has reserved some production, okay, some production activities solely for these industries. So government also plays a big role in encouraging the cottage and small scale industries. How? They reserve production of some articles. Say for example that there are certain food items like biscuits or water bottles. The government says that these are only to be manufactured or produced by the small scale industries. The large scale industries, the big industries will not be allowed to produce those articles. So in that manner, government also helps in the support, in the encouragement, in the development of the cottage and small scale industries. And that will go on to ridding poverty from our country. So the government's role and also the development of small scale industries, they are important to tackle the problem of unemployment. Okay, with that more people can go work in the small scale industries, in the cottage industries, and that way they will be rid of poverty. Okay. The fourth measure is income redistribution. Now we already know there is a big gap between the rich and the poor. Okay. Now what we need to do in order to get rid of poverty is to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. Make sure that the widening gap, the gap which keeps on widening instead of decreasing, that gap has to be reduced. That gap has to be made smaller and smaller. Then only we can get rid of poverty. Okay. Now government here also makes sure that this gap, widening gap, is reduced. And how the government does that? The government does this by some income distribution measures. Okay. The government sees which people are capable, which people earns certain amount of income and which group of people cannot earn the basic monthly income which has been kept as a limit, under which you'll be called or you will be put in the category of below poverty line, right? We did this in the earlier section. So now for those people who have large incomes, who have bigger incomes, all right, who are wealthy, now those people are taxed for the commodities that they buy, for the luxury goods that they consume. All right. Now, when you have money, when you can afford luxury items, when you can afford luxury goods, food, when you can go to a expensive fancy hotel for a holiday, fancy retreat for some relaxation, for some recreation, then the government makes sure that if I can afford it, then I should pay some amount of tax. All right. So that way, the government tries to reduce the gap between the poor and the rich. The rich are paying tax to the government. All right. And the government, what it does, it subsidizes some essential goods, okay, for the lower income group. Now, the lower income group, people who do not earn much money, right? They cannot afford certain things. They cannot they cannot purchase certain goods for themselves, for their family. Now, the government plays an important role by making sure that the people who do not earn much, they will be able to afford certain goods, consume certain articles. So, in that, what the government does, government subsidizes the prices of the goods. That means the government reduces the prices of the goods at such a level, at such a rate, that the people who earlier could not afford to buy that particular thing for the price which was put for that article, now can purchase it because the government has lowered the price. All right. If a pen, for example, if the pen, a normal pen, right, everyone uses pen, whether you are rich, whether you are poor. But imagine if you are rich, right, you can easily buy a pen which is 50 rupees, okay. But if you are a rickshaw puller and you have a son who goes to school and he needs a pen, now the rickshaw puller earns only 30 rupees per day, but the price of the pen is 50 rupees. Now here the lower income group cannot purchase the pen for that amount of money. Now what the government does, government subsidizes the price of the pen. So the government puts the price of the pen as 10 rupees, okay, for the lower income group. And now the rickshaw puller can afford to buy the pen for his son. All right. So that is how the government makes sure that the gap between the rich and the poor is reduced. All right. And with that reduction, what happens? The poverty is prevented. Now, another measure is called land reform measures. Okay. And what happens in this kind of measure? Here, the zamindari system is abolished. The system where zamindars control its land, control the land laborers, exploits them, gives them very small amount of wage. Okay, so that system, which is very exploitative, not good for the workers who are already poor, right? So that system is abolished. Okay. The security of tenant farmers against eviction is protected. Okay, the farmers are made sure that uh, their employment, their job, their wage, all right, are secure and protected, and they cannot be removed, simply removed from their job in the land where they cultivate by the rich or powerful landlord. Okay, the government makes sure there are proper provisions to make sure that the farmers, the landless farmers, the laborers who work in the cultivation or agricultural sectors, they cannot be simply forced to get out of their job. Okay. And rents are also fixed. So the landlord, the rich landlord or the powerful zamindar cannot put the price of the rent as per its interest or benefit. Okay, the rent has been fixed and they have to stick with it. They have to charge the same amount no matter what. All right. And by fixing of the ceiling on land holding. So the government also makes sure that everybody has a limit of how much property you can have. Okay, you can't, just because you're rich, you can't have everything. You cannot buy and you cannot be owner of all the land that is available. Okay, there's a ceiling, there's a limit, and you have to be under that limit. So that way the government tries to control how much land holding can a rich landlord or a powerful landlord can have. Distribution of surplus land among small and landless farmers. So this is another measure to prevent poverty. So this is a measure where if there are extra land, okay, available land, so what the government does is the government tries to redistribute or distribute that land among the small and landless farmers so that they can cultivate whatever they want, they can have their own business, they can build their house in that piece of land. So these are all efforts of the government. The government plays an active role in making sure that land reform measures are implemented and they help in proper distribution, in proper support, providing proper support for the landless laborers, for the laborers, for the weaker section of the agricultural sectors. Okay. Now, despite all these measures, okay, despite making sure that population is controlled, despite implementing land reform measures and other measures to prevent poverty, to make sure that we do not have as people in poverty, to make sure that the poorness or the state of being poor of the people is reduced, that the people have better living standards. Despite all these, there are still problems of poverty. Okay, people are still in the state of poverty, and there are more and more people getting into the state of poverty. So now, what do we do? What does the government do? What does the country do? So the government brings out, or the government introduces number of programs, number of schemes to make sure that if the poverty control measures do not work, then there are other programs which may help in alleviating, that means in lessening the problems of poverty, lessening the problems of poverty. Okay. So the government adopts various policy measures. Okay, it introduces various laws, it introduces policies, schemes and programs just to remove poverty from our country, from the people who are in a state of poverty. Okay, and how does the government do that? So the government tries to do that by aiming at providing employment for the people, or by aiming to improve the asset, okay, improve the asset of the poverty-ridden families. So the government tries to make sure that job opportunities are available, abundant for people to take the benefit of. Okay, and second, the government tries to make sure that people who are already poor, their power to hold property, their power to make some income, that power is improved. Okay, they make sure that they will be skilled enough to hold some job employment, to hold some opportunity to get to improve their lives. Okay, to make sure that they have some property, they have some asset which will help look after themselves, and also which will take them out of the state of being poor. Okay, so now we'll look at many of similar programs which the government has introduced. Okay, so the first one is Jawahar Gram Samriddhi Yojana, JGSY. Now this program was started on 1st April 1999. Its main aim was the development of rural areas meaning the countryside or the villages. Okay, and it built roads so that villages connect to the towns, or villages are connected to each other. That means the government would ensure that they have proper connectivity. Okay, for transport. Okay, and they also build schools and hospitals through these programs. Okay, so they make sure that the rural areas are developed. They have roads, they have schools, they have hospitals. That is the primary objective. The secondary objective, the second aim of this particular scheme is to give out sustained wage employment. The government through this scheme also makes sure that some kind of employment is provided to the people in the countryside, in the rural areas, with the help of which they can get some money and sustain their livelihood. Okay. So this sustained wage employments are provided not to everybody, but to the families who are below poverty line. Right? In the first topic, we learned who were the people belonging to below poverty line. Right? So the people who belong to the BPL or below poverty line, those families or people belonging to that category are provided with employment by the government through this scheme. Now let us look at the second scheme. It's called National Old Age Pension Scheme, NOAPS. Okay, this was started on 15th August 1995. Now this is basically a scheme which provides pension to old people who are above the age of 65. And now the scheme provides a pension or some amount of financial support to people who are above the age of 60. All right. So there are some people, old people who are above 60, they cannot look after themselves. All right, they're very old. They cannot now go have a job, can they? They're very old, they cannot. So they do not have any means of subsistence. They cannot go to work, so they don't have income. If they don't have income, they cannot buy food. They cannot take care of themselves, right? So they cannot look after themselves. So for these group of vulnerable people, right, for these group of people who are above 60, the government provides pension. And which government? Not the state government, not the provincial government, it's the central government. Okay, and that pension or the financial support is rupees 200 per month. All right. The third scheme, the third program is National Family Benefit Scheme, NFBS. Now this started in the month of August 1995. Okay, and this scheme was sponsored by the state government. The state government sponsored it. The state government made sure that this scheme was provided. All right, and after 2002 to 2003, this was transferred to the state sector scheme. So earlier it was not completely part of the state government, meaning it was not under the responsibility of the state government. The state government was only sponsoring it, okay, making sure that this was made available. The scheme was made available. But after 2002-2003, this scheme became part of the responsibility of the state government. Now the state government had full responsibility to make sure that this scheme was implemented effectively in their respective states. So this scheme came under the Community and Rural Department. Okay, so every state government has different departments which take care of different areas of the state. For example, agriculture, education, health, food, etc. Right? So this scheme came under the Community and Rural Department. All right. According to this scheme, a sum of rupees 20,000 was given to a person of a family. So each person from a family would be provided a sum of rupees 20,000. Okay, and that person is not just any person. Okay, that 20,000 would not go to any person in that family, but would go to that family, who would become the head of the family right after the death of its primary breadwinner. So the primary breadwinners are those who make the earnings, who earn the money for the sustenance of the entire family. When that person, it can be your father, it can be an uncle, it can be a mother, it can be a brother, okay. So if that primary breadwinner dies, okay, then the second person who can take the position of a breadwinner, he or she gets the money or sum of rupees 20,000 from the government, all right, the state government. The fourth program is called National Maternity Benefit Scheme. Okay. Now, according to this scheme, a sum of rupees 6,000 is provided. Okay, to who? A pregnant mother in 3 installments, meaning in 3 separate times. Okay. So, for example, if in the first time the pregnant woman is given 2,000 rupees, the second installment she would receive another 2,000, and the third installment she would receive the remaining 2,000. So the total is 6,000 rupees, right? So in 3 separate installments, a pregnant mother, a pregnant lady gets a sum of 6,000 rupees from the government. Okay. Now, to be able to avail of this scheme, a woman has to be older than 19 years of age. If she is below the 19 years of age, then she would not get to avail this scheme. Okay. Now, in case the child of the pregnant woman dies, okay, in such cases, the woman can still avail this sum of money. Okay. Now, this scheme is implemented by states and union territories within our country with the help of panchayats and municipalities. So, it goes into the inside. It does not happen in the cities, it does not only happen in the towns, but it happens through the panchayat level, the local level, the municipality level. Okay, through them they give these benefits to the pregnant ladies and women. The fifth program is called Annapurna. Now, this was started in the year 1999 and 2000. Now, this scheme was started to provide food to senior citizens, the people who are 60 and above. Okay. So, these people cannot take care of themselves, and they are not under the National Old Age Pension Scheme. So, we just learned about the National Old Age Pension Scheme, right? A monthly stipend of rupees 200 is given to people who are 60 and above. Now, this scheme, Annapurna, is for the old citizens, but senior citizens, but those senior citizens who are not availing the scheme of National Old Age Pension, all right, they are provided food by the government. So these old citizens, they have to be those who cannot take care of themselves, okay, in their villages, and they are given 10 kg of free food grains per month. In the National Old Age Pension Scheme, a sum of rupees 200 per month was given to the senior citizens. But here in this scheme, Annapurna scheme, food grains amounting to 10 kg were given for free in a month to each senior citizen. Okay. The sixth program is called Integrated Rural Development Program. Now, this is world's one of the most ambitious programs which is implemented in our country, in India. Okay. Now, this provides income generated assets to the poorest of the poor. It is for the poorest of the poor. Okay. It was introduced in the years 1978 to 1979. Now, its main objective, what was it? Its main objective was to raise families of identified target group which is below the poverty line, by creation of sustainable opportunities for self-employment in the rural sector. So the main objective of this scheme was to make sure that first you target the poorest of the poor, people who are below the poverty line, and to give them opportunities for self-employment. Give them such an opportunity that they can be self-employed, they can make some money, and they can look after themselves. Okay. So who are the targets? Who are the targets of this scheme? They are small and marginal farmers. Okay. They are agricultural laborers and they are rural artisans. Okay. So these people, in order to avail of this scheme, they have to have annual income below rupees 11,000 rupees. If you have below rupees 11,000 rupees, below 11,000 rupees as your yearly income, annual means yearly income, then you are eligible to apply for this scheme and avail its benefits. Okay. The next program is called Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana. Now this scheme was created, this scheme was introduced mainly for creating housing for everyone, to provide housing facilities for everyone. In India, there are so many people without house. They live in small makeshift tents on the roadside, below the bridge, on the road, everywhere. We see it everywhere. You look at the beggars, how they live, right? They don't have a house. So this scheme was introduced for making sure that people had housing facilities, basic housing facilities. It was initiated in the year 1985. Okay, when it was initiated, it aimed at creating 20 lakh housing units, out of which 13 lakhs were in the rural areas. So out of 20 lakh houses that were to be provided to the poor people, 13 lakhs were to be in the rural areas, in the villages, in the countryside. Okay. Apart from providing houses, it also gave loans to the people at subsidized rates to make houses for themselves. So loans were provided to people at very less interest. Okay, when you take loans, you have to pay interest. Okay, but many times interests are very high. The rates of interest are high. So the poor people cannot repay the money back, the money that they took as a loan. Okay. So loans were also provided by the scheme so that people can use that loan to build their houses. And in turn, the rates of interest were very low. Alright. The next program is called National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Okay. Now this scheme came into force in the year 2006. It was later modified as the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act in October 2009. What does it do? According to this scheme, 150 days of guaranteed paid work is provided to the people living in the rural areas. So this scheme is for the development of the rural areas. Alright, and it makes sure that people in the rural areas are provided work with a salary for 150 days. Alright, now this is managed, or this is operated by the Ministry of Rural Development. Okay, MRD, and they are the one, this ministry is the one which makes sure that the NREGA is implemented, or MGNREGA is implemented effectively in the rural areas. Now, apart from these schemes, there are other ways in which we have to make sure that those measures are important, or those factors are solved, those issues are addressed, so that the poverty, the problems of poverty are properly taken care of. Okay.